This week on the show, we're breaking format to do a Captain America Brave New World reaction post. It's time for Nerd Here Weekly. Bruno, do the thing.
We're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
This better not awaken anything in me.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast.
We have Santa Claus. Assemble.
Welcome to Nerd Here Weekly, a podcast about the week's biggest stories in nerdy news that this week is all about Captain America Brave New World, the newest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Guys, we're 35 movies in. How we feeling? I'm joined by Deepak Chitnis.
I thought it was Captain America, the New World. I thought this was the one that came over on the Mayflower.
This is where they discover North America. Jackson Trahan.
Hi, how's it going? This is the first Marvel movie I think I've seen in theaters in 5 years.
And Bruno Meneses. How you doing, buddy?
I wanted to do an NWO professional wrestling joke, but I don't want us to get canceled.
Yeah, well, fair enough. There's a lot of stuff to talk about this movie in terms of sort of the political, the politics surrounding it and all that, both in the movie and in real life. We're going to get to all of it. Before we get started, I am curious. I know I just got sort of single sentence reactions from everybody, but can we just go around the horn? Can everybody give me their sort of general reactions to this movie? How did this movie meet with your expectations? How does it compare to the other Captain America movies that we've seen lately? Obviously, there was like a sort of political bent to the advertising here that sort of called back to Winter Soldier. And now that you've seen it, are you impressed? Are you excited? Are you disappointed? Where are you at with your Marvels in general? I want to hear about all that, and let's start with Deepak.
It's the worst of the Captain America movies. It's probably also worse than Falcon and Winter Soldier as the series. That said, I did not hate it. I think a lot of the negativity around it online is a little overblown because of the reshoots or whatever. I will say that it feels very, very inconsequential. It's one of the most skippable MCU movies so far. And I think the biggest problem with the movie is maybe not even the movie's fault so much as the marketing's fault, which is that they really should not have revealed Red Hulk ahead of time.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Jack, you and I saw this one together, and we came out of the theater, and that's kind of what we were talking about, was that this movie is probably 100 times better if you don't know the Red Hulk thing going into it.
Yeah, definitely. I think I largely agree with what Deepak was saying. It's not like any part of this movie completely blew my brain out the back of my head, but it was basically what I was expecting it to be. And yeah, there are definitely a few scenes where they sort of feel like they're building up the reveal of the Red Hulk, but it's like I saw the poster, man, on the way in. I couldn't have helped it.
Right. And we've been, sort of like in this world, right, Bruno, and this goes back to the comics of it all, where like ever since The Incredible Hulk, and then again in Civil War and all the other times that Thunderbolt Ross in his various incarnations has appeared for us, we've sort of been asking, Red Hulk? ? Right? Obviously, this is a character.
A thing he famously does.
Yeah, this character is a known entity for anyone who follows along with the comic books. And even, going back to The Incredible Hulk, a movie that we're shockingly going to have to talk about a lot in this episode, like the Abomination plot
More than anyone's spoken about it before.
Right.
But we've seen Abomination already, right?
Well, but that's what I'm like. The Abomination stuff in that movie was sort of hinting at like the Red Hulk of it all, right? Like the way that Blonsky gets those powers under the supervision of Ross's sort of obsession with needing to become powerful enough to fight the Hulk. Like all of that was Red Hulk teasing back in 2008, 2009. So I'm like, Bruno, as sort of our Marvel Comics guy, where are you at with the Red Hulk of it all and how this movie fits into sort of the known universe?
So pushing all of like the marketing issues aside, I thought that they used Red Hulk, at least in my opinion, he was used rather well. Like putting the marketing aside, I think that the build up to the reveal of Red Hulk for the final act was pretty decent, but it got to an issue where we were almost siding with the leader. Like, can we please just have him turn at this point? Um, when it comes to the comic books of it all, I think they did a good job of, again, like presenting him and presenting, not necessarily presenting the year's worth of build up to him, because for those of you who don't know, the post credit scenes for Incredible Hulk, here we go. We're already starting to talk about this movie. That scene of Ross and Iron Man inside of the bar is a direct callback to the comic book panel where we learn Thaddeus Ross is Red Hulk. So for any comic book nerds, we've been thinking about Red Hulk since that happened. And then, like that being said, maybe the build up over the 16 years since that wasn't all that good, but I think the build up presenting the foreshadowing at the beginning of this movie, and then with the reveal in the third act, and then also leaving the door open for him to potentially come back in the future with like just, I mean, we're already talking about the movie, so spoiler alerts. At the end of the movie, Thaddeus Ross is left imprisoned on the raft with a bunch of other criminals, so that'll definitely lead to something down the line. At least I hope, but we'll only see.
Okay, so I want to really quickly run through the plot of this movie, and my question for you guys after I finish this synopsis, just so you are aware, is going to be, what is this movie about? But I'm not talking about like in terms of plot significance. I want to know like substantively, thematically, what are the elements of this movie that you guys think are important? Because if we think back to the other Captain America movies, right? Captain America, the First Avenger, is sort of this origin story for a universe that is also sort of asserting the thesis statement of the MCU, right? Like the potential of one individual who is pure in their intention to overcome some of the biggest, most nefarious evil the world has ever known, right? Winter Soldier is a paranoid political thriller that is about who you can trust and who you can't, the nature of friendship, the nature of alliances. And then those themes get pulled over into Civil War on sort of a more universe shattering level, right? They ripple up to, friendships and alliances dissolving because of information that was kept secret or previously unknown. So here's sort of my quick synopsis of Captain America Brave New World. 5 months into President Thaddeus Ross's term, Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, and Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon, take on the Serpent Society in Mexico, recovering stolen adamantium samples. Adamantium was discovered inside of an island in the Indian Ocean, where that big thing from the Eternals ended.
Fox Network.
As Ross tries to broker a global treaty to control this powerful new metal, a mysterious attack at the White House reveals a larger conspiracy involving Dr. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, who uses mind control and his vendetta against Ross to destabilize world powers. Amid tense international conflicts and personal stakes, Wilson, Torres, and a former Black Widow named Ruth Bat Seraph race to stop Stearns, while Ross's hidden health issues unleash a destructive transformation into the Red Hulk.
Health issues.
Yeah. He's got that heart problem. So, Jackson, you spoke up first. What is this movie about? Like, if you were to talk to somebody about, like, oh, this is sort of the theme of Captain America: New World Order, what do we think here?
I mean, I guess in terms of like character arcs, the only person who really goes through one is Thaddeus. So I feel like it would have to be centered around his growth and acceptance that what he did was wrong and being willing to take the consequences for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. A, he's not really our protagonist, so that's a dubious a claim to begin with. And B, I don't know if there is enough there to even construct like a coherent theme. And I do think that's one of the failings of the movie. I don't know if this movie has to exist. Deepak said at the start that it was kind of the least important one, or the most skippable one, I think you said.
Yeah.
And I think a part of that is that it sort of doesn't contribute artistically to the whole. If, like you said, at movie 35, there is anything left to contribute to the whole.
Yeah, and this is, I guess I'm sort of leading the witnesses here with this question, but when I think about this movie, like, it seems like it's obviously a story about, like, American power and leadership, right? And that might be...
Sure.
That might
Those
be...
are things it likes to talk about.
Right, and that might be because it was pushed in this weird way until after the Trump election, right? Like, there's this weird sort of specter hanging over this whole movie where it's kind of obviously, like, nudging up against our true reality, right? Like in this weird, uncomfortable way. Like, I mean, I don't mean to bring everybody down by reminding everyone what's going on and how bad the vibes are in America right now. But like the notion of this like angry president who is sort of targeting like the media and like outsiders and like fomenting unnecessary international conflict, and you know, to say nothing of his
Who is at the beck and call of a intellectual psychopath.
Yeah, right. And whose skin is at the best of times not exactly a natural color. Like there seems to be something there that you can hook onto, right? And certainly the notion that he is like pushed back on by a black man who is like the symbol for what is like the other America, right? Sort of the America outside of this guy's immediate worldview, right? While he's like sort of asserting a really strong military ethos, and this other guy's like advocating for like justice and reparations and considering those who are hurt by policy. Like all of that is there, right?
But Sam does also spend most of the movie working for.
Right. That's the thing.
Right,
Is like
right,
most of this movie is Sam Wilson running around doing what Thaddeus Ross wants him to do. And that's where I start to fall apart, because like I think the obvious thing here is have this movie be Sam Wilson sort of government going rogue, like doing a Tom Cruise, right? And like having, you know, whatever, the more proper government organization like chasing after him, running after him, trying to get him back in check, which is in the movie in scenes. And this is like, okay, I don't dislike this movie. I don't know that I co-sign a lot of I don't know that I co-sign a lot of the more like bombastic takes that this is like one of the worst Marvel movies ever. Asterisk, I do sort of love both the Incredible Hulk and Eternals, but like I think this is a perfectly straight down the middle Marvel movie. I put it in my rankings last night and it was closer to the bottom, but honestly I think most of them are completely watchable, and I think this one falls into that category. But I think, Deepak, that the relics of 5 rounds of reshoots and 5 story by credits is all over this thing. Like there is not a cohesive narrative through this. And this does show up in some funny ways. Jack and I laughing to each other that we literally cut from a scene where someone says they've ditched their cell phones to the most product placey shot of like a Sony smartwatch I've ever seen in my life.
It's the same shot. It's when he says the line, "We ditched our cell phones." So he can't be traced. You can see he's wearing an Apple Watch.
So, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think that any substance that was going to be in this movie maybe got ushered out around the same time we reshot Giancarlo Esposito in The Grey Void.
What airdrop is, though?
That Deepak and I hate to see so much in these Marvel movies. Do you know what airdrop is, Deepak? Also that.
Yeah, of course I know what airdrop is.
He clearly
you
does
saw
not
this. You saw this longer ago than us, so you don't remember the important plot point that is explaining to this old black man how to use airdrop. But go,
yeah, at the when they go to the White House.
Just too much dialogue about how to use cell phones.
Thaddeus Ross's, I invited all of the international leaders to come clap for America for discovering adamantium party, which I thought was a really cool move in terms of international politics.
I mean, that's pretty par for the course, regardless of who's in the White House. I mean,
I suppose so.
America's going to expose and they're going to expect the rest of the world to congratulate us. But no, what my takeaway from coming out of the movie, I'm trying to sort of pinpoint what I can kind of latch onto here, and I think I wrote this on Letterboxd, is basically it's about the idea of like electing old people, electing old leaders who have this history and baggage that basically ties them as much to external conflicts or conflicts of interest as their own inner demons, which is manifested, of course, by Red Hulk and by the fact that he is basically indebted to. He's put his hands in his life in the hands of the leader, who he's imprisoned and tortured and all that. And it is kind of cool to finally see a lot of that Incredible Hulk stuff come full circle and see Liv Tyler again. And I don't know how many points you really get for that. And it felt like, I don't know if this is a problem of having too many writers and reshoots. I feel like if I didn't know about behind the scenes issues, I don't know that the movie would have necessarily made that super obvious. but it does speak to the increasing need that Marvel still hasn't figured out that um, you have to have watched everything and you have to
Yeah.
keep going back and refreshing your memory on things. And it comes back to this constant conversation you and I have, Riley, which is about they no longer make movies that are based on comic books. They make literal comic book movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the idea that there's stuff going on in other parts of the universe and this character shows up for a couple frames, couple panels, whatever, it just kind of feels like there is a larger universe there that I don't necessarily know about.
Yeah.
But that's fine because I can go watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier and learn more about Isaiah Bradley, right?
Well, but that's the
Someone who
thing.
would probably deserved his own movie more than Sam Wilson. I think it would have been a more interesting movie and would probably get to some of the more substantial issues and topics that we want to talk about. But this is also not maybe the place to have those
Well,
conversations.
but when you're reading a comic book, right, you see at the bottom of a frame, like,
Yeah,
you know,
asterisk.
yeah,
Reference Astonishing Spider-Man
right.
issue 252.
And that's the
right?
thing
Yeah.
is when Joaquin Torres says you're the forgotten Captain America, we don't get a thing at the bottom of the frame that says we learned about him in Captain America.
Would you want
Falcon
that?
and the Winter Soldier.
Wouldn't people be complaining
No,
about
I'm
that
sure.
too?
I'm absolutely sure they would. But I'm saying just in terms of the limitation of the form,
Yeah, they're
like,
different mediums.
then what happens is you have people watching this movie who either didn't watch Captain America, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or who
And I don't think you need to have.
or yeah, well, interesting, or who don't remember it. And so when he says that, people are like, "Who's this guy? I don't know who this man is." I do think the reshoots are all over this thing. Like in my opinion, I think most of the leader stuff looks like it was pretty late in the game addition. I think the absolute absence of the
But
Serpent
didn't he go from
Society-
big head to lumpy head? Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, he looks totally different now than he did in at least when we saw.
Incredible Hulk, you see him start to he gets knocked out and then it starts to but then
I thought
he gets
we knew
progressively
that in this
greener
movie
in this
that
movie.
he went through a design change, but maybe that's what I'd heard about.
Well, I
I
think
think-
he gets greener.
I think that there was an original design for the character in this movie where he was more big head than lumpy creepy brain. I do think that character design is disgusting, but that's just my personal
It was effective on that front, yeah.
But like, if I recognize this is just as silly as this is especially silly to say in the same breath as me being like nobody remembers Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But if you guys remember all the way back to the Comic-Con where this movie was put on the slate, this was sold as the Serpent Society movie, and all of that completely drops out. Esposito is wasted.
It's a very dramatic. Like when you first meet him, it like pans in on the serpent logo in a way that feels like it's going to be a bigger deal than 3 scenes across the entire movie.
Yeah, Esposito is the only character that we even get proper Serpent Society usage for. He has no powers. Certainly none of the other Serpent Society guys get any address of what their deal is.
Powers are grenades.
Apparently the first guy that he fights in that he breaks his arm and then the guy comes in and apparently that was supposed to be Demolition Man.
Sure, and the Captain America movies have enjoyed that, right? We got Balchok the Leaper in Winter Soldier for one whole second, but like it just those sorts of things. I think that's where I see how the story of the movie changed over time. Is in the
sorry, that wasn't Demolition Man. His buddy is Demolition Man, the one that the leader kills later.
It's Demolition Man's friend.
Demolition Man's pal. The guy
and the buddy that comes in right then and says, "Oh, you should have saved some for us, Cap."
Right, and then he's like, "My brother's in the Air Force." Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then he's like talking on the phone with Amadeus Cho, and then he gets a heart attack and dies.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm too. And I try when we do have time to criticize film on this podcast, or when I'm writing about stuff, I do try and like assess the movie that we got, not the movie that I wanted. I think that that's an unfair thing to do, to like criticize a movie that doesn't exist. But I just really felt it on this one. The number of times I was like, why is all of this happening? Why is this the story that we're getting? How is this thing so out of whack with itself, like from scene to scene? And I felt myself like slowly losing grip on reality the farther I got away from having seen the movie. Like I got home and Maggie asked me like if it was as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I was like, no, it was fine. And then she asked sort of what it's about. And I was like, well,
It definitely sours the more you try to.
It's
Yeah,
like
I was. I,
Yeah.
It's, yeah,
it's,
100%.
it's like Sam Wilson goes on a little adventure, then he reports back to Harrison Ford. Rinse and repeat 3 to 4 times, and then he fights the Hulk, and then the movie's over. Like that's what the movie is. And yeah, I don't know how much there is there.
I don't think
Yeah,
we've
it's not
gotten
a
Bruno's headline
substantial movie.
impressions yet.
Yeah, Bruno, what are your thoughts about sort of like the thematic elements of this movie, or what it's trying to do beyond just tell a Captain America story?
Well, I mean, like
And
just
so,
going over your guys' like separate responses, and just looking into like the reshoots and the rewrites of it all. I don't think this movie has a theme to begin with. I think in the end, it just ended up being like a checkmark list of things that they wanted to make sure got across to the audience within the MCU before they moved on to the next big thing, like making sure.
But what were those things?
So, like, because again, we watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The mainstream audience didn't. So, for one, establishing Sam as Captain America. 2, establishing a multiverse, because we really only got that out of Loki. 3 is re-establishing the Raft as well as the leader, which is my biggest complaint when it comes to the marketing, is that they leaned so much on the Hulk and not tell anyone to watch the Incredible Hulk. And then there was a 4th thing that I'm blanking on with the check mark, but that's
Eternals, Adamantium.
Yes, Eternals and Adamantium. Thank you. Just bringing back Eternals into the time frame, and then introducing Adamantium to hopefully eventually bridge into the mutant saga. So I felt this movie was, at least in my opinion, unnecessary. But I need to force myself into a more mainstream audience member perspective, because most of those people did not watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, did not watch Loki, did not watch the stuff that are on Disney Plus, and with that,
what was multiverse about this movie?
It's the post credits.
The post credits.
Oh, okay.
You need
pretty much what I meant by a multiverse of it all is just setting that conflict up for Cap, putting that in his purview, because that has not been in his purview at all this entire time.
He's just a homegrown American lad.
And this has been, quote unquote, the multiverse saga. And it has never been brought to Captain America's attention until that post-credit scene.
I mean, the fact that this is the multiverse saga is maybe one of the most insulting narratives of this whole thing. Is like, I think that there is a philosophy within Marvel that no matter how rough shit gets on the MCU side, like things have not broken until an Avengers movie flops, right? Like individual superhero movies are allowed to do as poorly as they want, but like as long as the title The Avengers prints money, I think everything is full steam ahead.
Well, how do you feel on that front?
Well, Deepak and I were talking about this on the phone the other day. We're getting an Avengers movie next year. And like, they are running out of curb to kick this can down. And I don't know how much closer they are to like sticking that landing. Like to Bruno's point.
I mean, we were talking about who would it be.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Right. Who's on that team? Impossible to say. And yeah, this movie has too many like masters that it has to serve in terms of advancing the narrative. But like I would have we were texting on the Discord months ago when there was that presumed leak about a stinger that involved like a Nick Fury style, I want you to lead the Avengers. Right. And how disappointing that would have been in terms of a way to end this movie, just because it's like, I've seen that before. That's dumb. But considering the movie that we got, I would have been more excited about like someone handing him a portfolio with like pictures of Matt Murdock and Amadeus Cho and like,
so basically the Marvel version of Wonder Woman looking at Lex Luthor's files.
Yeah, sure. But like just to at least get me, because like right now, if you say who's on the Avengers, my answer is they don't exist. I mean,
but I think that might be what the Avengers movie ends up being about. I think they might be saving that. I think, the movie does have too much to do, and I don't know that Captain America is the right person to do that. Like, if you want to make a movie about Red Hulk versus Captain America, do that. If you want to introduce Adamantium and do something with the Eternals, do that separately. I also did not watch all of Falcon and Winter Soldier. I watched enough of it to know that I didn't care to watch the rest of it. But there's a lot. Whatever I've seen of the Disney Plus shows, they have generally felt like they could have been movies that got stretched out. And here, I think we have the opposite problem where there was too much for a movie. Maybe this should have been the series.
I felt like
And
this
the
was
Falcon,
just a season finale on that Falcon and the Winter Soldier show.
it
Yeah.
kind of was, yeah.
Mhm.
But then we got Falcon for 30 seconds, and it's all. I'm sorry, we got Winter Soldier for 30 seconds.
yeah.
It's basically all Falcon, right?
Yeah.
Did they introduce Joaquin Torres in the show?
Yeah, but I
He
don't
did,
know if
yeah.
he suits up.
He doesn't suit up, but he gets the suit.
He does the Don Cheadle, maybe, or
Next time,
the
maybe.
Terrence Howard,
Yeah.
maybe next time.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I could talk about this forever. How does this fit into the meta narrative thing does drive me insane. But let's start to drill down on specifics of this movie. I want to talk about Sam Wilson as Captain America. So this was a thing that we were interested in for a long time, right? I remember on this site, on Weekly, us talking about it when they started to test it out in the comic books, right? It was all the same time that we were getting Riri Williams as Ironheart. We were
Mhm.
getting Sam Wilson as Captain America, and we were getting Jane Foster as Thor. Sort of this one big Marvel Comics pivot that was clearly like,
All of which came to the movies in short order.
right, that was clearly like a meth lab for what can we do once we start losing these larger characters, right? What works, what doesn't work, how will people react to these things? And as I'm sure everyone inside of Marvel predicted,
Insane that like the actual comic book platform has now become the proving grounds for
Yeah.
these movies. But
Right.
go on.
yeah,
Right.
well, and as I'm sure everybody at Marvel expected, the internet had a really chill, cool, normal reaction
Oh, yeah.
to a black Captain America and a Lady Thor. Riri Williams, for some reason, seemed to dodge all bullets. Maybe people
I
just...
don't think she's as big of a character.
And she
as
wasn't
Thor
called
and
like
Captain America.
Iron Woman
Yeah.
or what. I don't know. Maybe that had something. I don't know. But I remember those
I
other
think it's
two
because
people.
she got introduced via a team, and so like they sort of like made
Was
it
she
easier
called
for her.
Iron Man?
She was called Ironheart.
She was called Ironheart, but like I think she was like part
those
of like a
other
West
two-
Coast Avengers or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Those other two people
Yeah.
absolutely lost their goddamn minds about, which was just completely unhinged. Deepak, you were sort of tongue-in-cheek texting me the other day being like, wonder what's different about this Captain America that everyone's having such negative reactions compared to past films. How do you think the character of Sam in the movie sort of contributes to the legacy of Captain America? If we think about the Steve Rogers thing as sort of like, if his whole legacy is
You're not Steve Rogers.
yeah, right. We can all have fun doing our Harrison Ford voices as much as we want in this podcast. If we think about the legacy of Captain America sort of being Stanley Tucci saying, it's yeah, it's what's in here. And
That's what he said. It's
and
not.
dab. Yeah, Stanley Tucci and I famously as charismatic as each other. And then later on, Steve, at Peggy's funeral saying, "No, you move." Right? Like, if that's sort of how we remember the Steve Rogers of it all, what do you make of Sam Wilson sort of taking on that mantle and how he's moving the story forward?
He's the less idealistic version of that. I think he's someone who's willing to work with the hand that's dealt to him, and I think he is more of a politician. I think he is more of I don't agree with you, I don't like you, but like what he tells to Isaiah Bradley, like, I know you have a problem with the administration and Ross and all that, but we need to try to work together. We need to try to get past these things. And I think that is sort of, if you want to find a thesis to the movie, going up to a previous question, it is sort of, things suck, we don't agree, we don't like each other, but at the end of the day, we do have to somehow, some way. I don't like this president, and I don't agree with what he's done, and I have literally fought him, and he has almost killed me and crushed my head when he's holding him like this. But there are ways that we can coexist, or at least try to find some way to coexist and keep moving forward. Now, the problem I think a lot of people have with that, and this again goes towards the post 2024 of it all and the new election, is that people don't want to hear that message anymore. It is a zero-sum game. It is a line in the sand. There is no coexisting with people on the other side. And I think that is really where a lot of the the venom against this movie comes from. It's not necessarily that it's any better or worse than the Marvels or Ant-Man 3 or whatever. It's the fact that it's a perfectly mediocre down the middle movie that is saying things that people just do not care to hear because they flat out don't believe in them anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where I'm curious to see where, if they, I don't think they're going to, but if they were to do something interesting with, you know, Anthony Mackie's Captain America, it would be, how do you continue to exist as a symbol of unity in a country where people just don't want to unite?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Jack, just because you called it out, I mean, yes, the movie makes the subtext text by having Harrison Ford growl out, "You're not Steve Rogers." Like, how do you feel, you know, there is this whole, like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was basically a story about which of those two characters deserved to carry the shield. And we always knew it was going to be Sam Wilson, because that's how Endgame ends, and we knew the streaming series couldn't change that because they weren't allowed to matter that much. Also because the comic books did that. But how do you feel like that sort of like handoff is dealt with in this movie, in turn, you know, like Sam Wilson not taking the super soldier serum and then like sort of regretting that, and then like having to come back from that, him having a suit that is powered by the Wakandans, him, you know, saying, you know, really being overt about like, I am a black man that is, I mean, this is from the Winter Soldier TV show.
Although one quick thing, he's able, the very first time we see him, to fly all the way down and land in a superhero pose with no super enhancement.
I
Nothing.
think
Like,
the
how
idea
do his
was that
knees
he used the
survive?
wings to slow him down prior to the landing, but
I
I
would hope
agree
so.
that was not communicated
Well,
clearly in the shooting.
Yeah, no, that would be an issue because physically speaking, they're saying that like the backdraft from his incoming landing is what caused him to fly back.
Yeah.
So that
I agree.
would mean he wouldn't be able to slow himself down if
But
he
he's-
didn't want
but
it
he's
to
got-
cause that impact.
He's got black.
Yeah, he's got like
Black
Wakandan
Panther powers now.
reinforcements.
Yeah, but
Right,
if he
his
had Black
wings
Panther
absorb.
powers, if he had Black Panther powers, we would have seen the purple blowout that we were seeing throughout all of the movie, except that one
Sure.
scene.
Well, okay, I don't remember this. I do
No,
feel
I
like
agree.
maybe
I
his-
agree with Bruno that
yeah.
it was the sonic boom, but also I don't know. The movie's not accurate to physics. What do you want?
Right,
Yeah,
sure,
exactly,
fair enough.
Exactly.
We're not Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, actually,
The new Captain America.
he would get his shit ripped apart if he was flying around in this.
Can you imagine the opening scene? He just lands and becomes a fine red mist. That's the end of the film.
Yeah. So, Jack, what do you make of the Rogers to Wilson sort of story?
Yes. Okay. So all of that is true. I think that certainly it's pretty funny, his like tongue-in-cheek sort of "God, I wish this weren't me" lines, especially when he is fighting the Red Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
What's a Red Hulk?
I think the whole that line in particular sticks out to me, the "You're not Steve Rogers" one, because in context I feel like it just makes no sense, where Harrison Ford is like, you don't get to make these sorts of unilateral decisions, you don't get to act outside of my authority. And he seems to cite that he's not Steve Rogers, which I found weird because I didn't think that was an authority Steve Rogers had either.
He also
Yeah.
was famously put under a government muzzle by Thaddeus Ross. Yeah.
Right.
Was literally placed on the raft, wasn't he, for a bit?
Right. So I feel like it's it falls short there, but in terms of his like coming to accept being Captain America, it also kind of doesn't work great for me. Like I said, I don't feel like he goes through a huge character arc here. The whole "I should have taken the super serum" thing does feel like a joke. I don't think he actually regrets that decision, like as a moral stance. I think he wanted to be able to punch harder.
Right. That's supposed to be the whole like reason for Isaiah Bradley as a character, right? As sort of this, and I recognize that we're not supposed to talk about this anymore now that Trump's the president, but like this sort of Tuskegee Airmen-esque like analogy of, or maybe that's not even the right historical pull. My brain's so fried today. But, you know, like the notion that we have like this black man who was imprisoned by the government and experimented on, right, to be made into a super soldier. That's I think that's supposed to be like important that Sam hasn't done, like made that decision. But anyway, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Hasn't profited off of that system. No, I agree. Um, I would also say, just to Deepak's point, now that I'm thinking about it more, I feel like there's a cooler angle on this. One thing that distinguishes Thaddeus Ross from real life is that his campaign was focused on togetherness.
Yeah.
And I think that makes his tantrum later when things are falling apart and he's being poisoned and he's like, fuck it, I'm going to start a war. It's like,
yeah,
cooler in that way narratively if they'd leaned more into that, if this was the Thaddeus Ross movie instead of being a quarter of the Thaddeus Ross movie. And so obviously that culminates in him fighting with Captain America. And so Cap, spoilers if this wasn't fucking clear, talks him down at the end after failing to talk him down once before. Feels simultaneously like I see what they were going for, but also hanging a lampshade on it in the way that they did, where they're like, oh, you can't reason with a Hulk, and then he just does.
Right.
Feels so strange.
Right. There were
a lot of parts of this movie, I think it feels just incongruous.
There are reports out there that the original plan was to have, and Bruno, I don't know my Marvel comics well enough, so you can fact check this, but the report that I saw was that Sam was going to construct a suit out of the adamantium, which would have the ability to absorb gamma radiation. And that the sort of kill shot, or like presumed kill shot that we get, where Captain America like kidney stabs Red Hulk with his wing, would have like sort of started to downgrade his powers in some way. I don't know if that would have been more compelling or not, but maybe would have made him more prone to negotiation. Bruno, I'm going to take your confused frown as either you're not sure or that doesn't sound comic book accurate.
Nope, not one bit. Yeah, no, never heard of that in my life.
I am curious, Bruno, what do you think? Like, okay, we have now a Sam Wilson who is Captain America, right? Both in name and in society. Like, he is called Captain America. That is the role he has politically. He has the shield. He has the star-spangled costume, all of that. His costume is sort of Iron Man themed in term, like, you know, Iron Man is the last guy we saw jetting around with like fighter pilots and stuff. He has Wakandan power infused into it. Do you feel like Sam Wilson as a character is set up to be the leader of the Avengers moving forward?
Yes, I think so. And that brings up another checkbox that like the movie made, was that he wants to put together the next Avengers, with how things ended. And like as you started describing him and like bringing up how he's like a much more techie Captain America, it almost makes me wonder, why didn't they go down a path of trying to make him a version of Iron Patriot instead? Because maybe that would have been better. But at the end, maybe that's something they want to save for Rhodey, or maybe if we hopefully
they already
eventually
did it. They're not saving anything.
See Norman Osborn, we will see it.
If you could Captain America.
That's true. But that being said, I think they did a good job of establishing him as not only a Captain America, but as sort of like the next Nick Fury, even though the first few movies after Endgame was sort of establishing Wong as the Nick Fury, but we're going to just pretend that never happened. And maybe Avengers Doomsday is going to start with like quote unquote Sam's big week, of him just like going around recruiting people. Maybe he runs into Miss Marvel and she's already with the new Hawkeye, because that's how the Marvels ended. My big issue goes into like the super serum of it all, because as Jack pointed out, they did make it into a whole joke. At the end of the movie, it almost seemed like he was fine not having the super serum, but then they decided to still write in that one last joke. Told me not to take the super serum, bulky piece of shit, like whatever. So I don't know.
Riley, you had a point when we saw it about how the nostalgia cycle is catching up to the original Avengers, and with the rumors that the first post-credit scene was going to be another Nick Fury, I want you to start the Avengers. I feel like it's pretty definitive that like they are trying to redo at least that part of Captain's story.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of why I am so like perplexed by the fact, like the upcoming Avengers movie, is that like this movie feels like it's on the chessboard, like the role that Incredible Hulk had in the phase one, right? Like
Right.
we're seeing things blending together. We're starting momentum towards what we recognize will be sort of the culmination of all this. But I don't know that it feels like we have as much momentum as we even did in the second movie. Like Tony Stark showing up at the end of Incredible Hulk was seismic in a way, right? Like that conversation between him and Thaddeus Ross, which at the time, I mean, Bruno's exactly right. Like, was sort of a question mark around: Are we going to see William Hurt Red Hulk out? Which would have been insane. Like, I don't know that we ever get a Red Hulk without this recasting. But it would have really tickled me to see Hurt's take on it. I just don't know that like where this universe stands right now is ready for another Avengers movie so soon. And you guys said, and maybe you're right, that like that's the story, right? Like maybe we have like broken.
And was the first Avengers movie even about getting the Avengers together? Really? That's like the first half of it.
Yeah, it's like first 20 seconds. Yeah.
No, it's more than that.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
most of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, when they finally start to understand each other, Hulk goes Hulk and whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I mean they have time to fight each other
helicarrier
and stuff.
It's
but then
it's not until Coulson dies that they actually start teaming up.
That they're a team.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, the geographical assemblage is a very short amount of time. But sorry, Deepak, what were you going to talk about?
No, I just think the fact that we're so meh about things in general, right? Everyone's excited about Fantastic Four. Everyone's kind of holding their breath with, for lack of a better term, nervous anxiety, but anticipation for Thunderbolts. And we're coming off of 2024, where we only had one Marvel movie, which was Deadpool and Wolverine, that everyone loved because, again, it was nostalgia bait for things we didn't even know we were nostalgic about. And we got Wolverine back and all this kind of fun stuff. I think the next thing to do, really, who's lining up for Shang-Chi 2? Who's lining up for another Captain Marvel movie or
Right.
another Ant-Man? It's time to start bringing everyone together. They're going to throw the Hail Mary now with bringing back Downey. We've got Fantastic Four now. We're going to get X-Men. It's these individual stories that they've been doing since Endgame, with Thunderbolts, I guess, being the closest that we're going to get to an Avengers movie since Endgame, 6 years ago at this point. Is them, I think, understanding that we need to start teaming people up because it's not going to work otherwise. So yeah, I mean, what else would you do? You're going to keep making Spider-Man movies because Spider-Man's the only guy who has his own cachet to bring people in? Sure, but yeah, and Spider-Man and Deadpool are the only two characters that I think have the ability to do that now.
Yeah, right. Doctor Strange is apparently in another dimension. We need to hard read.
No, but I mean, they could make a Doctor Strange 3 movie. I mean, the Doctor Strange 2 did well enough. Black Panther 2 did well enough, but I don't know that people are going to be lining up for Black Panther 3. I mean, they will because it's Black Panther, and I think it carries a lot of goodwill from the first movie. And I thought the second one was almost just as good. But Doctor Strange, for whatever reason, lost a lot of his cachet with the second one. I know it made a lot of money, but people generally didn't care for it. So you have to start bringing people together. And your team is going to be your new Captain America, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, the new Black Panther,
the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, Thor, Fantastic Four, and whatever's left of the Guardians of the Galaxy after the third one. And then Captain Marvel. And then you start picking up from there the little side characters, your Shang-Chi's, your Wongs, your Ant-Mans, whatever.
Right.
And they're probably not all going to be in Doomsday. They're all going to come together for Secret War, and we're going to get different versions of all the different characters coming together. But yeah, I mean, it's time because at a certain point, we can keep talking about these individual movies, but we're going to have the same conversation, which is, okay, it was fine, but what was the point of it?
Yeah. Yeah, which has been a problem they haven't known how to solve since Avengers. Sort of. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think another problem of it all is, like, as you mentioned with Avengers, since Avengers Endgame, they haven't figured out what vision they wanted to like put forward to us, the audience, and they also like never figured out how to properly sell whatever vision that was. And then more so, that all started falling apart when we got to the writer strikes, the actor strikes, the Jonathan Majors of it all, and that eventually led to that big Palm Springs retreats, which is where like they supposedly overhauled everything that they were currently planning on for MCU and just started anew. So I think with that all in mind, like they have a new vision, but we can't see it yet. Like we couldn't see it with Captain America because Captain
It
America
starts with Fantastic Four.
exactly. It starts with Fantastic Four. I have some hope that it could start with Thunderbolts because Thunderbolts at least started filming after the overhaul from Palm Springs. But I'm still more confident that Fantastic Four is really where we're going to be truly seeing that new vision and hopefully actually see something viable enough to hook us in to like keep watching these things going forward.
I would bet money that Thunderbolts is a soft finale for all of Phase 4 and 5.
Right.
It is their defenders,
Because
for the Netflix show. And that doesn't mean it can't be good, but I think that's the last time we see everyone except maybe Black Widow and Bucky.
Well, actually, the Thunderbolts cast is already listed. Like most of them is already listed for Doomsday.
Is that an official cast or is that just people,
That's a production
throwing
listing.
names into IMDb? Is it really? Okay.
So
Yeah.
on the Thunderbolts point, in the comics, Thunderbolts is a team who typically or almost always includes Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, aka the Red Hulk, who
Mhm.
you get in this movie rafted up at the end. Do you guys think, I mean, what, if anything, do you think is the relationship between Red Hulk and the movie called Thunderbolts? Like, is it just a throwaway? Like, is that the other half of the joke that we've seen in the trailer? Is that Bucky says, like, we can't call the team that's the name of the terrorist president? Or is Harrison Ford secretly in this movie? Like, where are our heads at in terms of that?
It does seem weird to release them so close to one another.
Right? Bruno, you say nothing, though.
I feel it should be Zilch, except for that one thing that you mentioned about Bucky just being like, we can't call ourselves that. There's like Red Hulk was that. Yeah, no, I think they're gonna just. I think the reason that Red Guardian wants to call it Thunderbolts is because in the Black Widow movie they decided to make that the name of Yelena's like soccer team when she was a kid. But there's not really gonna be. I don't think there's gonna be like an actual connection to Red Hulk and like Harrison Ford, like showing up. I mean,
I'll throw something crazy out there. There is a God of Thunder in the MCU.
Sure.
So
that'd be great. I mean, you speaking of which, Deepak, I bring it up because not since Loki has Marvel had their hands on a villain that really had this level of cultural cachet.
Who is the villain in the Thunderbolts? Do we know that? It's not Sentry.
It's
right?
probably the Void.
Yeah,
although
it's. I would assume it's the Void being manipulated by Val. Is like my take on it.
The Void,
or both Sentry and the Void being manipulated by Val, or
a Sentry, just by who they cast, is going to be a good guy by the end of it.
Yeah, this newest trailer has some weird shots where it sort of makes him look ominous or whatever.
It's
but
hard
I
to
do
explain
agree.
without straight up giving it away.
I do sort of agree.
I don't care anymore.
By the end, but this is okay. This is the point. Usually these Marvel villains suck ass, right? Like we usually never remember or care about a Marvel villain. Like even the attempts to do some of the biggest ones lately, like Namor, I don't know that we ever see again, right? Should be one of the biggest characters in this universe. Probably doesn't come back to the screen in a post Wakanda Forever world. We have the Red Hulk, a massive, massive character in this universe, played by Harrison Ford, one of the biggest actors in the world. Does that just go away after that? Does he just become another guy on the pile?
No,
I think he just is. He's gonna. You don't get Harrison Ford to do multiple movies at age 82.
Yeah,
you
right.
get him
That
to do
seems like
one
Harrison
movie.
Ford is the bottleneck on that problem.
Yeah, he's been there for one movie. He makes a big splash. The movie had a great opening weekend, despite a B- cinema score. I think the next time you see Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, you will see a CGI Red Hulk using Harrison Ford's likeness. Maybe they get him to make some facial movements. That's
You
it.
could barely
And
get
I
him
think-
back for one Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they got him back for 5 Indiana Jones movies. This man will work for money if you pay him.
Suppose so.
Well, I think he'll do it if he wants to. I'd heard the reports that
Yeah,
he
I
just
also
did
think he
not
likes
enjoy.
Indy a lot more than Thaddeus
Yeah,
Ross.
and
the Red Hulk.
that's the thing. Apparently he was not a very pleasant person to be around on the set of this movie.
I'm shocked. All right, as we start to wrap up, we've been talking a lot about like the meta level of like where this fits into the MCU and everything, which I do think is more of interest to us just in general. But I'm curious, like, do we just not like this movie? Like, I mean, we started off all sort of being like, yeah, it was fine, but like, I would love to just go around and sort of think like, or get you guys' opinions on like out of 10, where does this land for you? Is it good? Is it not good? Does it have rewatch value? Sort of however you want to tackle that question. But I'm just curious from everybody how this movie is. I will start by saying that I think this movie, for me, is less rewatchable than any of the Captain America movies that we already got. But I don't necessarily think it is bad. I'm just sort of in a place with Marvel right now where I don't know how much rewatch value any of the post Endgame movies have for me at this point. And like, I recognize that I'm sort of on crazy person island with that opinion on No Way Home, but I think that's sort of the consensus on, yeah, you and me, buddy. But I think that that's sort of the consensus on a lot of the stuff these days. And I feel like that's the cage they've got to really break out of. And like what we're talking around with this bigger MCU thing. So yeah, I don't think it's trash, which I feel like I've heard a lot of people say it is. I do think you can see a lot of the seams. I think it's a 5 out of 10. Like, it's fine. It's aggressively fine, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I think the longer that I stew on the movie, the worse my opinion of it becomes, which is pretty rare in my experience. Or at least for me personally. But I do think I agree. Like, I don't think it's terribly bad or offensive in any way. I just feel like it's sort of at worst uninspired, and like you said, kind of, or like we've been saying the whole time, feels almost unnecessary. Like it doesn't know what it's trying to do. And a part of that is, I think, like we said, symptomatic of the larger scope of not knowing where this like whole story is going.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily anything about this particular movie's fault, which is why maybe it feels so bland. But I don't know. Maybe also your movie should exist in isolation.
Yeah. And, well, that's the thing is like, I just can't help but keep thinking that like, if there wasn't another Avengers movie right around the corner, and if this thing had the space and the air and the time to just be a Serpent Society movie, if we didn't need to establish a Red Hulk and have the leader with Seth Rollins, absolutely. And if we didn't need to establish a Red Hulk, if we didn't need to have the leader warn about the multiverse, if we didn't have all these other like check boxes to mark off, as Bruno alluded to, like there might have been a good movie here, but it just starts to end up like it's Kevin Feige rushing to get his homework done on time. And like, and I think that that's sort of where my beef with it comes in.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the movies of all time.
It is one of the movies.
It's certainly a movie.
It is a movie. I think maybe I did like it more than I hated it, but I still hated it enough to not watch it again. Hate is a strong word. Disliked. Because my biggest issue for sure was just like some of the writing and some of the dialogue of the movie, and like how you could very clearly tell that there was like a handful of people that wrote separate scenes. Not really knowing what were the scenes before that or what would be the scenes after that sometimes. But yeah, aside from that, I think I got out of the movie calling it sort of a B-. After texting my friend Justin for a good while, that ended up turning more into a C+. But that's still like sort of the range of where I keep it. I just like, yeah, it's an average movie. Yeah.
Pat?
Not the worst MCU, not the best MCU.
Any franchise that goes past like 4 or 5 movies over a period of time kind of plays by its own rules as far as what is good and what is bad. There are really only like 2 good Star Wars movies, and the rest of them depend on your tolerance for space wizards and bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And the MCU has long since passed that point where most MCU movies, if you're looking at them on the spectrum of actual movies, don't work because They don't introduce characters. They don't have complete arcs. Everything is left dangling at the end of the movie. And it's a constant case of sequelitis, right? So you're judging it not against the spectrum of movies, you're judging it against the spectrum of just Marvel MCU movies. And even in that, I gave it 2.5 out of 4 on Letterboxd. I thought it was, like Riley said, fine, not a bad movie, not necessarily a waste of time, but at the end of the day, you're going back through phase 4 and 5 and your lead up to Doomsday or Secret War. I think you can get away with just finding the post-credit scene on YouTube, rather than sitting through the entire movie.
I forgot Deepak
Yeah.
was systematically bringing down the average of every Letterboxd movie by refusing to use the 5th star.
Yeah, my one account that gets, if on a good day I get like 3 likes on a review, I'm systematically bringing down everything.
Can I ask why you rate out of 5? I mean, out of 4 rather than 5?
It's because 5 stars doesn't make sense to me. 4 stars is the standard. 5 stars then just becomes 10 stars, especially if you're doing half stars anyway. What's the point of it? 4 stars is what Ebert and everyone has
say
used
it's
for
'cause
like
movies-
decades and
movie
decades
reviews
going
historically
back.
have
Yeah.
used 4 stars.
'cause- yeah.
Yeah, it's 5 stars is an internet construct. It doesn't make sense. 5 stars with half stars especially doesn't make sense, because then it's just 10 stars.
I think 5 stars make more sense when you think about grading scales. That
Some
usually
people
go
would
up to
argue that makes
100
even
and
more
10.
sense, but we shouldn't
Yeah,
get into
these are
this.
you guys are
This is a
you guys
weird
are
way
like
to
10
end
years
this.
younger than us. That's why it makes more sense.
It's a letter grade thing. 0's an F, 1's a D, 2's a C, 3's a B, 4's an A.
Also, no. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, this has been our review of Captain America. Brave
And my letterbox.
Brave New World, a movie that I have struggled to say the correct name of for the last hour, and I don't think I got it wrong even once. If you want more stuff like this, remember to head over to nihf.com where you can sign up for all of our stuff for free, or hit up our YouTube at youtube.com/nerdhereFirst. Be sure to follow us on the social media channels at nerdherefirst on everywhere you find socials, even the bad ones, even the ones that are run by shady leader-like characters who shouldn't be consulting the president. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this show wherever you find podcasts, if that's your jam. We want to thank Bruno Meneses for producing the show. We want to thank Sterling Haynes for running our social media. We want to thank Purple Planet for our theme tune. We want to thank Wiki Rascals for our logo and artwork. And we want to thank you for checking back every week. Next week, we're going to be talking Oscars. We're getting closer to the award ceremony. And we'll just be back to our normal format of wrapping up the nerdy news of the week. And don't forget to tune in then to hear.
Did anyone notice that this movie didn't have the normal Marvel logo at the beginning?
Yeah,
no,
and I don't think
that-
Fantastic Four will either. Isn't that weird?
Oh, it won't?
Well, because they're doing that weird 60s
It'll
thing.
be
Yeah, they're gonna do like
it'll be a new
custom
one
blue or
probably.
something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
True.
But yeah,
But I can't remember the last time. I don't know if any of them didn't have the opening logo. I thought that was their way of.
Well,
You remember a
definitely not
few
any of
years
the
ago,
Captain
or like
ones, 'cause
when
the last one was in 2016.
Well, remember when like Marvels came out and they started doing this whole thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna label certain movies as like premiere Marvel and
Yeah,
other
right.
ones that you
Yep.
can kind of. So I thought this was maybe their way of acknowledging that. Like if it doesn't have the red Marvel logo, you can just get out of the theater and leave. It's fine. You don't need to see this one.
I think it's something more along those lines, which means I don't think we'll see the red logo in Thunderbolts either, but I think we might still see it in Fantastic Four. And then later, and then it'll transition into like a more 60s style logo.
It'll be some retro six. Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad this episode had an after credits.
Hey,
That's how Marvel
there
works.
are other
baby.
podcasts.